What can you tell us about this individual, the shooter who was arrested, who's now talking to police?
Well, the situation is obviously tragic. We've had an active shooter incident. We've confirmed 5 fatalities. There are several more injured. They are in the best of care, and we are praying for them and their families. The shooter is in our custody and currently being interrogated.
And can you tell us if you know who this individual is? I take it he had no identification, no ID on him.
He has not been particularly cooperative. Law enforcement does have a name. We're not able to confirm it at this time, I'm sorry to say.
And do you have any idea what a possible motive might have been?
No indications of motive at this point, but I will say I'm so proud of law enforcement. Police officers of both the city and our county, as well as sheriff's deputies, were on the scene within 60 seconds. It could have been much worse. And they went into that building without a moment's hesitation and showed immense courage.
They certainly did. And do you know, if you say he's not being very cooperative, is he doing any talking at all?
I'm not in the interrogation facility, so I can't be that specific, but my understanding is that he's not being particularly forthcoming.
And when he was stopped, there was no exchange of gunfire, we're told, between police and this shooter. Did he just simply run out of ammunition?
As best as we can tell, there was no exchange of gunfire between law enforcement and the shooter. He already put his gun down and surrendered without incident. He was trying to evade law enforcement. He was hiding in the building, and we found him.
Do you know where he was hiding?
My understanding is that he was found under a desk.
He was found underneath a desk with his long gun still on him?
My understanding is that the weapon was on the ground and not in his immediate proximity.
Was he in the newsroom of the newspaper?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Was he actually in the newsroom of the Capital Gazette newspaper?
We're not confirming that. He was in the office building which houses the Capital Gazette newspaper.
Yeah. We did hear the police say that he was there in the newsroom. Do you know, Steve, if there were any warning signs, any threats, anything that could have indicated an incident along these lines could be taking place?
None to my knowledge. I have not heard any suggestion that there were early warnings, indications of any kind.
So you don't know if the newspaper specifically was targeted?
We don't know that at this time.
And when he was hiding underneath the desk...
It was in the facility of the newspaper.
When he was hiding underneath the desk, was he trying to evade police? Was he pretending to be a victim?
That's an interesting question. We don't know the answer to that yet, Wolf. That's the purpose of the interrogation, is to determine those very kinds of questions.
The 5 people who were shot and killed, were they journalists?
We don't know that. We have not revealed the names, the identities of the victims. 4 of them died on the scene, in the building, in the offices. 1 was evacuated to University of Maryland shock trauma and was treated there, but unfortunately, despite immense effort, the individual did not survive and has deceased.
Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible situation right now. So walk us through, Steve, what's going on right now.
Well, it's quite an amazing scene. As I mentioned earlier, law enforcement was here in very large numbers within about a minute to a minute and a half. Several control stations, command stations were set up for various purposes. Police, fire, for intervention and for medical care. And within a matter of a few more minutes, there were more than 100 law enforcement professionals from multiple agencies, including federal agencies. So it's Anne Arundel County Police and Fire, City of Annapolis Police and Fire, Sheriff's Office of Anne Arundel County, officers from Howard County, Prince George's County, federal agencies, ATF, the FBI, Capitol Police from the City of Annapolis. It's an immense operation, and I'm so proud of law enforcement, how they sprung into action so quickly and with such professionalism. It was a finely tuned operation, and they practice for these things. The public should be aware that these professionals are ready, and they are so courageous to go into that building knowing there's someone in there shooting. To protect other people is something that I know we are all grateful that there are these kinds of professionals willing to put their lives on the lines for us.
Yeah, these are heroes, and we're all certainly grateful to them. We heard at the news conference, Steve, that there was they believed it was an explosive device there with this individual that was taken care of. What, if anything, can you tell us about this explosive device? Was it a real explosive device or something that looked like an explosive device?
When public safety entered the building, there was a package or knapsack, some sort of carrying device that was on the ground. The shooter did not identify it or its contents, and I think, conducting the investigation on the scene, it was determined that it may have been explosive liquids, possibly gasoline, but I can't confirm that for certain.
But there was it something that could have exploded? So in other words, it was a real explosive device, not simply something that looked like an explosive device?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe it was an explosive device. I believe it was an inflammable liquid.
All right, well, that's still pretty scary.
The building is now secure. Everything has been checked and the building is secure. There were no other devices or items of concern and no other shooters. It appears to be the act of a lone shooter.
What does it tell you, Steve, about this attack? How much planning does it look like went on?
I'm not a professional in the field, but it does not look to me to be a particularly well-planned operation. It looks like it was amateur hour. But even amateurs can cause a lot of damage in the absence of excellent response by law enforcement, and we fortunately had that in this instance.
I know you and your team over there, you've spoken to eyewitnesses, you've spoken to some of the victims. Do you know if he was shouting anything as he was shooting?
I have not heard any information along those lines, I'm afraid.
What have you heard from some of the eyewitnesses? And I know you've spoken to some of them.
I've not spoken personally to any of the eyewitnesses. They are in the hands of law enforcement professionals who understand the craft of interviewing people in those delicate situations. These people have been traumatized.
Tell us a little bit more about the Capital Gazette, this newspaper that's been around for well more than 100 years.
The Capital Gazette is our local Annapolis paper, has a large circulation, I believe, of around 40,000. It's very well read, very well respected. And my heart goes out to the employees, management, and owners of the Capital Gazette that this has happened in their offices. It's a very, very sad thing. And
the newspaper focuses in on local news, right? It's not focusing in on big national or international stories. Is that right?
They do both. They do excellent coverage of local news, and that's our primary source of local news in this area. But they also, as an affiliate of the Baltimore Sun, they do provide ample reporting on national and global news as well, along with financial reporting. So it's a full-service newspaper.
Will there be a photo released of the shooter?
I would assume at some point that will happen. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because everybody's anxious to know who this individual is and what the motive was. What can you share with us about the condition of some of the victims who are now in local hospitals?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, 4 of the victims were deceased and on the floor of the facility when law enforcement arrived. 1 had life-threatening damages to her arm and upper body. She was evacuated to University of Maryland shock trauma and deceased there at shock trauma. The others, 2, perhaps 3 other people are wounded with less severe injuries. They were taken by ground transport to Arundel Medical Center, which is located here in Annapolis, a very short distance from the site of this terrible incident. And that facility is well equipped to care for victims of this level of trauma. Very fine institution, and I'm sure that those people will have a full recovery.
Do you know when this shooter will be arraigned?
No, I don't.
But that would be the next step in the legal process. In the meantime, he's being questioned, not answering a lot of questions. Have they provided him an attorney as far as you know?
I'm not aware of that. He's at CID, our investigative division, where he's being questioned. State's Attorney Wes Adams has been here on the scene. He will obviously lead the prosecution. And at this point, it's in the hands of our criminal investigators to gather all the evidence, determine what happened, and to determine why it happened. We all want to know.
Yeah, Steve Schuh is the Anne Arundel County Executive. Steve, you've been very, very helpful to us. Thank you so much for answering our questions. We want to stay in very close touch with you as well. Our deepest condolences to all of the victims and their families. This is a heartbreaking situation that has unfolded. Thanks so much for joining us.